Hey everyone. So occasionally you get asked the question about violence in the Bible. And for some people, particularly more modern Western people and, kind of more liberal progressive nations like America, Canada, and Western Europe, they seem to have a difficulty putting pieces together of, passages in the Bible that talk about violence or God killing people and then other commands to love your neighbor as yourself. And how do all these pieces fit in? I don't think this is a universal problem. I don't see this at all times in church history or even now in different parts of the world. When I've spent time in North Africa or in the Middle East, I've not encountered so many people with these issues, but I see them more in the modern West. Sometimes it's outsiders, unbelievers, kind of critiquing or wanting to debate Christians and saying that Christianity is immoral because of this. But other times it's sincere believers trying to have a coherent, ethical view of Christianity, but really struggling. What are some things that I might be able to say? And I'm speaking, I guess, mostly to Christians for whom this might be a struggle. What can I say that might help you? Well, particularly if I was speaking to an unbeliever, if someone said this and well, look at all the people God killed in the Bible. And I said, well, what am I supposed to believe in? Humanity? Look at all the people humanity has killed over the years. The body count of, humans killing people through dramatic and violent means seems to far exceed maybe what God has done. So, if I have to pick between putting my trust in humanity's goodness or God's goodness, I think I'm going to go with God's goodness. I think the body count might be more in my I might have better chances with him. That's one thing. I need to say that semi-sarcastically, but particularly maybe more to outsiders who are trying to provoke. On another level, though, even though so many people die at the hands of other human beings, and particularly through the last 100 years or so at the hands of their own governments very often, I'd say, in one sense, God kills everybody, in the ultimate philosophical sense. I don't mean that through interventionary violent means, but, when Adam ate the fruit and, God commanded Adam, in the day you eat of the fruit, you shall surely die. When you sin, you will surely die. And we are a race of sinners. And God told us at the beginning, if we choose the path of sin, we shall surely die. And hey, he was telling the truth. Because sin has entered into our race, so has death. Death followed on the heels of sin. And so everyone dies, whether you die at 100 of old age or, at 50 in a car accident or 10 years old at the hands of a mass shooter. It's like, even when you die at the hands of somebody else, and in some sense, God is ultimately reigning over all of it. Even if he's not causing it directly, he's permitted death to invade the human race. Angels don't die, but human beings do. And that's because we are sinners and angels are not. And so since that's God's prerogative, he gives us life and he can choose to take it back. And that's not immoral of him. If I go and I take my neighbor and I shove his head in the bathtub and I drown my neighbor, that's immoral of me. That's murder of me. But God brought my neighbor out of non-existence and made him exist. And God can send my neighbor back into non-existence should he choose. Death isn't quite non-existence. It's actually more of transferring from one existence to another. But you get my drift. God gives us life. He can take it back. God's God. He has the right to do that. If God wants to send a flood and wipe out humanity, God could do that. He gave everyone life, and he can take it back at any age and really any way he wants. And a flood, mass flood, isn't necessarily the worst way to go compared to many other cancers or diseases or long, slow, protracted ways of dying of what we call natural causes. So on one hand, God has every right to do all of that. Secondly, when people tend to focus maybe on the violence of the battles of Israel and Canaan, I think there's some room for hermeneutical, or what we might call exegetical nuance for some of these things. When, some passages talk about, and you need to wipe out the Canaanites, men, women, and children, just, wipe them all out. Is there any room to understand at least some of that as hyperbolic language, or what I mean by hyperbole, like exaggerated language, but that's acceptable, morally acceptable exaggerated language, not seen as dishonesty or lying. I think there's some room for that. we in English would say, if our high school team played another high school team in basketball and we won by a whole lot, we'd use words like, oh, we annihilated them, we killed them, we destroyed them, we wiped the floor with them. And we would all know what we meant. We didn't necessarily mean you literally killed them or annihilated them, wiping them out of existence, or you didn't really destroy them, but you had a big victory. And when you use that language, we understand what you mean. Is there room to think that when the accounts of in Joshua and Judges, when Israel went to war with the Canaanites, that sort of language? Yeah, I think there is. For one, in one passage, God will be talking, or Moses or Joshua will be talking about wipe them all out, and then in the next passage you'll be using a different verb, driving them out. Driving them out of the land. Well, that's quite a different thing if you're looking at it very literally. To wipe them out, to destroy them all, and then to drive them out so they flee the country and go to other nations. Well, that's two different things. And yet, if you look at the passages, driving them out and wiping them out seems to be used kind of interchangeably. Secondly, you're given commands not to marry them. When you settle in the land, do not intermarry with the locals. Well, how can we intermarry with them if we've literally wiped them all out? Killed every single person. You wouldn't need laws like that against intermarriage if that was actually a thing. And secondly, from the actual historical accounts, when it records them wiping them all out, they left none alive. What do you see? A generation or two later, they're fighting them again. The Amalekites or the Jebusites, they are really going and fighting them all over again. When it records them taking Jerusalem and wiping the Jebusites out, well, a couple generations later they have to go because they didn't literally take all of Jerusalem, they just took part of Jerusalem, and there are still some Jebusites there. So is there room for understanding that as some hyperbole? Sure there is. We are to love our neighbors and we are to be kind, and yet we live in a fallen world, and sometimes there's war and you have to defend your families and your people, and that's just part of it. And God's God, and he can kill people and rain down hail from the sky and send lightning, and he's God. He can do whatever he jolly well pleases. Okay, those are just a few thoughts. If you have any more thoughts or would like to engage this discussion, leave some comments. If you want to follow on, please, if you're following us on YouTube, like and subscribe, and hopefully I can respond to some of you. God bless. Have a great day.